coming back to my mom, I think about what she experienced and how her life ended at 51. And I remember she told me we were coming back from one of her cancer treatments, and she said, I know I did this to myself. And I will never lose those words, because a lot of us are in some subconscious way. We're not doing it intentionally, but we are self-abandoning in some way, or we're not listening in some way. And my experience with ayahuasca and then with somatic experiencing, I can tell all of the listeners, you don't have to go to the jungle and do ayahuasca or DMT to have a profound change in your life. When you learn how to communicate with your body and how it is communicating with you, it changes everything.
We have an amazing episode for you today. Jalena is a nationally board certified trauma trained somatic health coach who helps high achieving women move out of survival mode and into true freedom. Blending nervous system science, somatic experiencing, mindfulness, and lived experience, her work shows that regulation isn't about shrinking or quote unquote calming down. It's about expansion, joy, self expression, and actually enjoying your life again. Today's conversation will rock you, probably in the best way possible. We got right into it, and the things that came up in this episode are super personal, both for her and I. We share stories of our mothers and the cancer and their journeys and what that looked like. And this episode is really important to me because this is the time in your life where you have to stop ignoring the symptoms, the signs, the intuitions, the downloads, the whispers, the hair loss, the weight gain, the issues that you're struggling with, and pretending like it's just midlife or menopause or premenopause or something outside of your control. Today's episode hopefully will shift the way you think about how you move forward after listening. If you want to get into her world, everything's down below in the show notes. I hope this episode lands for you. And if it's not something that you're personally dealing with, please send it to somebody you think this would be helpful or valuable to. It is our duty as women to share this information, to know that there are people out there that can help us work through things that we may feel like we're dealing with alone. This is the reason why I continue to create this type of content with the podcast and do the work that I do, so I can be surrounded by other amazing women like our guest today. I hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome back to the show, and today we have an amazing guest for you. You guys are going to be just as lit up as I am. We're both running on a lot of caffeine and just the vibes of wanting to drop in with you around a topic that I think has a misconception online, because when we talk about identity work, when we talk about doing the hard things and we talk about healing, some of that stuff feels icky and we want to avoid it. So today's guest is going to help us feel a little less icky and get to the real shit on how we can actually heal ourselves so that we can then insert whatever fucking thing you want to do. So welcome to the show. I'm so excited you're here. Let's dive into this. How did you get into this work? Explain this to me. We need a backstory.
Well, ayahuasca in one word. Yes, I had already been in personal development. I was a personal trainer. I was doing group fitness. I was a board certified health and wellness coach, mindfulness meditation teacher. And I say all that to say, if there was something to do to heal, I have done it. Read the books, spent tens of thousands of dollars on supplements. And so ayahuasca, I was like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. So I pop over to Costa Rica, and I have one of the quintessential bad trips, right? The first journey was really terrifying, but it brought up things that happened when I was like 6 years old. And nothing super traumatizing, but as a 6-year-old, I remember being really scared to sleep alone in my bedroom. But I also remember my parents saying, "You're too big to sleep with us." Parents were a little harder back then, right? I mean, I was 6. So I remember the moment, and this came back during that ayahuasca journey, of being a 6-year-old and terrified to go to sleep. And all that fear came rushing up. Fast forward to getting home from that experience, and I started to have a lot of anxiety, like anxiety and disassociation in ways that I had never experienced. I was in what we reference in somatic experience and in the trauma world as functional freeze for probably my entire life, which is I can get shit done. I am high drive. If there's somebody who can be depended on, it was me. Emotions, what are those? Like, we don't talk about those. We don't do those because those are a waste of time. that experience, what I always tell people was it started to thaw that freeze, and everything that had been suppressed and repressed over decades of my life was just like, ah, it's like a jack in the box. It's like, let's play. Integration took somatic experiencing. That's really what led me into the world of trauma, the world of somatics, the all things polyvagal, Peter Levine's work, and into the work I do today.
OMG. I was just mouth on the floor because what is wild is I related to so much of that story. And in a recent hypnotherapy session, it was like a group led one on another program I'm in. They brought in a hypnotherapist to do this visualization exercise. And that was one of the things that came to me was I didn't feel safe as a child. Mm-hmm. And not around, there was a few specific things that popped up. She took us almost like timeline therapy. And we went to 3 specific times when we were kids. And the one thing that kept coming up for me was that I didn't feel protected or safe. And so I've spent my entire life trying to create that safety for myself and everyone around me. And so imagine that any situation you're in, you're trying to diffuse the situation. You're trying to like make everybody else feel safe. It's a complete disassociation of what's actually happening. And just the awareness that once you have these awarenesses about what you're doing or what you've been doing, and you can start to thaw those things out and understand where they came from and why you've carried them for so long, then you're like, okay, great. Now I've done the one thing, I'm aware of it, whether it's through ayahuasca or a conversation or therapy. There's so many modalities. And I think what's wild is my mom has been on this kick for the last couple of years. Peru seems to be calling her name, and she wants to go do ayahuasca. She had a rough childhood, youngest of 6. My mom's in her 60s. So, even back then it was like definitely hard on kids. But I grew up in that era too of like children should be seen, not heard. And so it's not a surprise that I didn't feel safe. Like even just speaking up when I wanted something different, or if I didn't like something, right? Or you're trying to defend yourself when your brother did it, but you didn't do it. Like there's so many things that we think they have to be these high level trauma incidents in our life, but they could be simple things like I was scared and I wanted to sleep with my parents. Like that's a common fear. If you're a parent, I have a 15-year-old. Like I have friends that still let their kids co-sleep and they're like 7, 8 years old. So that is wild. And how old were you when you had that knowingness to say like, F it, I'm going to go do ayahuasca in Costa Rica?
That would have been 2021. So it wasn't actually that long ago.
And did something happen specifically that made you go, I'm going now? I need to go now?
It had been on my heart for quite a while, but what led me there was I was doing all of these things that were said, this is what you do to heal, right? I'd spent a month in Nepal at a Buddhist monastery. So I'm not a novice when it comes to mindfulness, meditation, sitting with the self, building awareness. But I kept like getting diagnosed with autoimmune conditions. And I'm like, what the F is happening? Like I'm doing all the things. I'm reading all the books. And so the ayahuasca was like something feels stuck, and that feels like the thing to get it unstuck.
Did you only do ayahuasca when you were there, or did they have you do any other sort of ceremony?
No, that one was ayahuasca, and the thing I did was 3 nights in a row. So you do ayahuasca 3 nights in a row. I took the second night off because I was like, I don't know what just happened, but that was freaky. So I took second night off. So I did 2 journeys. Second journey was complete duality from the first one, which was such a refreshing experience. But also going into the first ceremony, my intention was realign me with my soul no matter what the cost. And she came in and she was like, you wanted me, you got me.
She's like, bitch, we're cleaning house today.
Yeah.
You're going to be so uncomfortable. Oh my gosh. It's funny because I've done a few different drugs in my day, y'all. I'm no saint, but it's funny because I find that like the older we get, the more in control we want to be. Like that was one of the reasons why I never did certain things growing up that other people would be like, YOLO. I'm like, no way, because I don't know. Alcohol, you're like, oh, I'm getting a buzz, like I can stop. Or like certain things you can kind of control that. And I laugh because you have to be at a place where you're just so open and you're not there for certainty. You're praying for like a desired outcome, right? You like want to, it's like when we pray, but you don't know what the sign's going to be. You don't know what's going to come through. Like you don't know what's stuck and blocked under all of the years of conditioning and performativeness and all of that shit. And I've watched so many people, women in particular, read the books, listen to the podcasts, go and do different, wellness things, and still not like be in their purpose and feel like they're doing all the work. So how can we make this type of work fun? Do we all have to go to Costa Rica and do ayahuasca, or is that where you come in?
Yeah, I mean, that's where the nervous system work comes in. And I want to just make sure everybody understands that somatic experiencing is the work, the life's work of Peter Levine. All right. He is like the godfather of somatics. There's a lot of talk on social media right now about the vagus nerve and resetting your nervous system. That is not what I do. The work that somatic experiencing teaches is a 3-year training program, and it's nuanced. And I bring that up because I want everybody to understand that this is actually really different than what social media is talking generally when they're referencing nervous system resets and rewiring and all that stuff.
So let's pause there for a second, because when someone hears the word somatic, that is just movement, right? Like, what does somatics mean in regards to how you're using the word?
So somatic, soma just means body.
Body.
Right?
Okay.
So anytime you're talking about somatics, you'll have somatic breath work, somatic yoga. Anything that involves we're using our body is technically somatic. Somatic experiencing is experiencing the language of the nervous system. So imagine how difficult it is to learn a new language, especially, in midlife. It's difficult. It's challenging. You have to learn words, and then you have to learn how to put words together, and certain languages put things in places that we don't in English, right? When we're learning somatic experiencing, we are actually learning, it's been likened to learning a new language, because we're learning how to listen to the signals that are coming from the body. And the body speaks in sensation. We're just so conditioned, especially in Western culture, to ignore the sensations in the body. And for women, like Jess, I get that you're probably like this. I was certainly like this. The women you work with and are listening were probably like this, but we are good at overriding the signals the body is sending, right? Because that's how we get shit done. That's why everybody comes to us, because you need something done, go to Jess. She'll figure it out. Count on Jess. Jess can do everything, right? That's who we are. That's how we were raised. But that requires us to continuously override those signals that the body has been sending. And so in somatic experiencing, it's kind of like coming home and finally learning the language of how your body is speaking to you. And just like learning any other language, once you know how it's communicating, you get to listen and engage in a totally different way.
Oh, so much there. Let's just sit with that for a second, y'all. Let's just sit with that, because truly, I want to say that almost every person that comes into my world, whether it's for coaching, my masterminds, even in my events, are usually that person for their friend group, for their family, for their business. That's why they start a business, because they've been told they're so good at that. They can hold so much. You're so strong. And it's not to say that you can't be both and. Like, you can be strong and still be there for everybody while also understanding that you're not listening to yourself. And before we hit record, I shared with her that I personally have been very tight with my time, energy, and boundaries on who I'm spending it with, including who I have on this podcast. That's why we haven't had a lot of guest episodes recently, is because listening to my intuition and understanding if this is where I want to be spending my time and energy is transmutable through this podcast. If I am just like clicking things to click it off the list, like check an episode with the guest, cool, great, hope it's value, but like on to the next thing, that is not going to translate in the way that an intentional conversation with something I'm really passionate about with the women that I'm working with, that you're listening to this podcast, can quite literally relate to on so many levels, soul level, whether you've done it to the extremes or you just kind of are like that. It's the thing that I think makes us who we are. But at the end of the day, when you override your intuition or the knowingness or the signs that your body is giving you, you will pay for it later. You will, whether it's through hair loss, weight gain, weight loss, bad skin, autoimmune things like you talked about, unexplainable.
Yeah. And I mean, most of the women I work with a lot of autoimmune conditions, because I was that person. And my mom, she died when I was 21 of stomach cancer, but she was a fibromyalgia person, right? So she back then had autoimmune conditions, but it was all considered like in your head and psychosomatic, and there's nothing actually wrong with you. Well, there is, and it's at the level of the nervous system, and it comes back to not feeling safe. And for those of us who grew up in spaces where we didn't feel like we could be authentic, we could express ourselves, we get very controlling. We have to control everything that we can control because there's certain things that we can't control. And I know you mentioned the control piece a little while ago, and that was a huge piece for me too. I mean, controlling to the degree that if a pillow was shifted on my bed, I knew that one of my brothers had been in there while I was at my friend's house. It's like everything has to be just so. But that was what allowed my system to have some semblance of safety, because I actually didn't build that in my nervous system from an early age because I didn't have that co-regulation on board.
If only you could ask your mom a million questions right now and figure out you could have helped her. And I'm sure that's part of your mission and why you're doing the work you're doing. And also, you wanted to break a generational pattern that you saw was happening to you. And I think this is where I talk a lot to my clients about, your personal mission and then your professional mission. And we all have like a personal mission, whether we start with that as how, why we're in business. But, just hearing the story of your mom and the things that she dealt with. My mom had a heart attack in her early 50s out of the blue. My mom's the type of person that will send you a text. Hey, had a heart attack. I'm on my way to the hospital. I'm fine. What? Like, hi, zero. What the fuck? Who gets a text like that? I did. And then several years later, she was fine. No explained reason why she had the heart attack. That was it. She was fine with it. They put her on an aspirin regimen. She didn't ask any questions. I was like, are we serious right now? Like, okay. And then several years later, she ended up getting uterine cancer. And I found this out because I'm a yapper and I've been in the beauty industry. And I happen to have a client who was a doctor who went through the same ordeal as my mom. She's probably about 10 years older than my mom. And I just happened to be sharing with her my mom's symptoms because luckily she did mention my mom's also was a client of mine back then. And, the hairdresser hears everything. And I remember my mom telling me her symptoms of going through menopause. And I'm like, this doesn't sound normal. I've never heard anyone talk about this kind of pain and the waking up and the different symptoms she was having. And so when I told the client about it, my client's like, oh, she has uterine cancer. Call my mom that day. She goes in for a biopsy. They're like, yep, you need a hysterectomy. You got to, we got to go through treatment. We got to do all these things. And so my mom spent a lot of time asking questions. And she came to the conclusion that it was self-inflicted because my mom is a little woke. My mom is definitely spiritual. And my mom definitely knows that, what we put in our body, yes, the supplements, all the things, but also our mind. And when she went and worked with it, she worked with a healer. The healer said, what are you still holding on to in that womb space that you haven't let go of? And I was an accident. She had me at 19, 18. And so there's a lot of things that, she never discussed or dealt with. She just went on her way and took care of it, handled business and was a boss. And she's continued to do that for her entire life. And so when she went through that process and I watched it and she shared with me like what she was going through, she put herself on a fully keto diet. She did all the spiritual work. She did this, she did that. Pretty praying, all the things. 6 months later, my mom didn't have cancer anymore. Yes, she had a hysterectomy, but they also pulled a lymph that still had cancer in it. And 6 months later, she cured herself. And I think like this is the work we don't talk about because she could have just kept avoiding the thing, but her body gave her a reason to stop avoiding it and to like pay attention. And I don't want that to happen to anybody. That's why I wanted to have this conversation with you because I see in real time, like the women that I work with just dealing with this stuff and not expressing how hard it's been for them to deal with this or that or whatever it is. And maybe, hopefully, they haven't gotten to the point where they have an autoimmune just yet, but maybe there is something there that they're not actually like saying because they don't want to admit that it's true. So how does someone one, assess, and then two, what would be our first step to like understanding which direction we go in the process of healing?
Yeah, sometimes it's the self-assessment can vary so greatly. I think I've come to a way of explaining it, and you can tell me if this is clear or not, but there's a disconnect. There's like the person that you want to be, and then there's the person that you are being. And in between that space are a bunch of different choices you have to make in order to collapse that timeline to become the person you want to be. So the person you want to be makes different choices. She thinks differently. She moves through life differently than the person you are being. But the people you work with, the people I work with, they know what this looks like. This is like what they want to achieve. They just have to figure out how to start to become that. And so that can look like a lot of different things. That can look like I have these recurring health issues, that I've taken the supplements, I've seen all the doctors, nothing's working. This could be relational patterns, right? I keep attracting the same kind of partner. I keep attracting the same kind of people in my company or in my business space, or the same type of friendships. I'm always this to all of my friends, but I really crave this type of friendship. But they don't know how to break those patterns, right? Some of it is subconscious, but a lot of it, what I want them to really understand is it comes back to the nervous system. And so much of that is conditioned from a very young age. So I can use myself as an example. I have abandonment is something that I've dealt with my entire life. And it goes back to when I was younger and my dad worked out of town for 60 years and my mom was essentially home with 3 kids, 5 days a week. To a child's mind, how that shapes your nervous system is completely different than how we can look at it rationally as adults. But this fear of abandonment leads to me behaving certain ways, build certain patterns of behavior in relationship to like romantic partners, for example, or the way that I show up in friendships when I want to say something, but I'm like, I don't really want to lose this friendship. So let me not rock the boat and let me just go along to get along. So those types of behaviors, it's like, this is how I want to be, but this is who I'm actually being because this is the only thing that I know is safe.
Yes.
Right.
Oh my gosh. So much there. I feel like I could just sit with that whole explanation and go journal about it. So if y'all need to just pause the podcast for a minute and you need to journal on that, like, please do. We're not going anywhere. In fact, where can people find you? Because maybe this is enough. This is all they need. Just they needed awareness to know people like you exist. Where can we find you?
Yeah, I'm at Jalena T on all my social platforms, Instagram, Facebook, my website. From the website, they can find ways to reach out to me, DM me if they're just interested in the work. Yeah, so just Jalena T.
Yeah, all this will be down below in the show notes, you guys. And honestly, I think if you're getting stuck between a rock and a hard place in a lot of different ways, this could be the one thing that will unlock everything for you. If you've ever read the book, The One Thing, you know if this work is for you and that it's time to dig in. It's probably not going to feel good. It's probably going to feel exactly like her first ayahuasca trip, right, guys? Because I think this is the thing and why we avoid it, because your brain is wired for safety. We want safe, predictable. We don't even want to rock the boat with ourselves. So we tell ourselves the lies that we're telling our friends or our family or people we don't want to ruffle the feathers. We don't want to get honest because honesty would require us to do something different. But if that gap that she's talking about the way you're being and versus the way you'd like to be showing up or the way you'd like to be living your life feels like it needs a supportive arm or someone who's walked that path before, this is where, asking for help, paying for help, getting into people's world who understand what this experience will be like so that you don't have to do it by yourself. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things about social media, getting in groups and rooms. You and I met in another person's like networking call group, Jillian Murphy, shout out to her. She's a curator of such amazing rooms. And we were in there talking about sales. And then we got put together on a breakout session. And I heard what Jillian did. And I was like, we have to have a conversation about this because it is the thing that I think everybody, men and women, want to avoid. I think about my relationship with my partner and people that I've seen go through and do some of this deeper work. It just unlocks a whole new sense of freedom aside from the positive physical benefits that probably will happen. I can't implore enough how important some of this work is. And so if you guys are curious, go check out and ingest all of her stuff, get in her world, ask her some questions. I really just wanted to have you on the podcast today to bring awareness to this conversation at an even higher level, because as I said, I'm witnessing and experiencing it for not just myself, because every new level that you want to reach or climb to will require a different version of you. And so I bet you see that happening with women as you start to unlock things with them. What do you notice are the outcomes when they really start to do this work? What are the shifts that are happening? It's probably so fucking cool to sit there front row and watch it happen.
Yeah, I mean, this work never ceases to amaze me because my one-on-one program it's a 4-month container and we meet weekly. And Jess, I'm not kidding. I can't tell you how many clients I have that by month 3, I'm like, girl, I think we can move to bi-weekly or monthly because I'm like, let's just wait for life to life. And when you need the support, I am here. But we can work on other things, right? I'm also a personal development and all these other things, but that's how quick the nervous system changes things. I have a client who came to me with debilitating anxiety and she was having panic attacks and migraines. Within 2 months, she gets on a call and I always start by asking for your wins. And she's like, I don't really know if anything happened. And I'm like, well, how's the anxiety? And she goes, oh, I haven't noticed it. I'm like, oh, so that's just so normal now. That's not even a win for you anymore. But with her, the interesting thing is everything that was driving the anxiety and the headaches, and she thought something was really wrong with her, like maybe she had a tumor or she was really ill. She was a people pleaser. And every time somebody asked her to do something, like an ex who cheated on her, for example, would want her to do a favor for him, she would just say, yes, okay. Because she would feel so guilty if she said no. So what we actually worked on, we didn't work on the anxiety all that much. We worked on what was driving it, which were these people pleasing patterns that if I say no, this spiral of shame and guilt is what's playing underneath. And the discomfort of being with that was so hard for her. She just kept self-abandoning and self-abandoning to the point it was causing physical symptoms in her body. 2 months. 2 months. And she came to me on one call, and I will never forget it. She said, he asked me for something, and I said, no, that's it. I didn't explain it. I didn't justify it. I just said, no. And I was like, yes.
So many stories of my clients sharing and things are popping in my head right now. One in particular, she said she used to get such beautiful like feedback from friends, family, and people that she owns a business for being accommodating. And she was praised for it, how accommodating she was. And later to learn that, you know, her husband had been cheating on her, you know, with multiple women and different things were going on. And, you know, here she was doing all these things, raising children, you know, and like just making sure everyone around her was taken care of. And now this is the work that speaks to her, is helping women stop self-abandoning through nervous system regulation. And it's like such a cool thing that we're in this time where once we experience something and then we learn how to solve our own problem, we can just reach back one or two rungs back on the ladder and help other people. And that is such a special, magical place to be. And I know that a lot of people aren't like, oh, I can't wait to be an entrepreneur, or I want to totally like knee jerk shift careers. But you experience something that's so powerful, it shifts who you fucking are to the point where you're like, I'm going to blow up my entire business that I've just built for the last 20 years. And I'm going to go speak a new language and do a whole fucking other thing over here. And that's where I give so much mad respect to people who step into the coaching space and can hold this type of energy and who want to do this kind of work. Because let's be honest, it would be so much easier to go get a corporate job where you're just checking boxes, making that money, not taking shit too seriously, and carry on. Okay? Like, can we just speak up for a minute? Because I feel like this is a conversation no one's really having.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have people come into the world all the time, and I'm like, being an entrepreneur, running your own business is not for the faint of heart. And all of your unhealed shit, guess what? It is going to come up, and you are going to have to heal it. So it's almost an initiation in so many ways. But my corporate job was easier. It was consistent. I had plenty of flexibility in my schedule. I had negotiated time off whenever I wanted. That was the deal, right? As long as I can pop off to my next vacation whenever I want. I had it really, really good. And I could work a minimum of 20 hours. I could work up to 80 if there was overtime. It was a good gig. But again, coming back to my mom, I think about what she experienced and how her life ended at 51. And I remember she told me, we were coming back from one of her cancer treatments, and she said, I know I did this to myself. And I will never lose those words, because a lot of us are in some subconscious way. We're not doing it intentionally, but we are self-abandoning in some way, or we're not listening in some way. And my experience with ayahuasca and then with somatic experiencing, I can tell all of the listeners, you don't have to go to the jungle and do ayahuasca or DMT to have a profound change in your life. When you learn how to communicate with your body and how it is communicating with you, it changes everything. I just had to do it in order to find it, in order to help everyone else.
You're like, I went and got my doctorate on paper with all of the studies and things I invested in. And then I went through my hell week of initiation to join the fucking military. That's what you did. I think this has just been such an incredible conversation. I hope if you're out on your walk or you're driving in your car or you're sitting alone, brought to tears by some parts of this story and just awareness, that you scroll down, click the show notes below, go check out the content. This is something that someone who is trained in this work needs to do for you. This isn't something that just some random business strategy coach can do for you. And I'm not calling myself some random business strategy coach. What I am saying is that this type of work requires a deeper level of understanding and energetics so that you can fully express what it is that's going on, how you're playing a role in it, and have somebody who understands to the fullest and can help you lead you through it. Thank you so much for your energy. Thank you for pushing to come on the show. I'm so grateful we got to have this call. I could just like ask you a million questions. If someone's in a realization that like this is something they need to tap into, is there anything we can do, like a practice right now that we can give them if they're in a safe space to like start to verbalize, put, words to how they're feeling, or maybe just quiet? I don't even know what I'm really asking.
Yeah, I get this a lot. Everybody wants like these simple practices. And because I'm trained in it, I'm always reluctant because each nervous system needs something different. But for your specific type of client, Jess, and the people who are probably listening, the women who are in your world and in this space, if they're anything like you and I, we're like high drivers, we've had control issues in the past.
Say it, girl.
Yeah, we're constantly overriding our systems. We're like, I don't really want to go for a run today because I feel a little run down, but I have to go for my run, right? So we're always overriding. So for this type of nervous system, one of the best things we can do is actually just slow down. You and I had our extra dose of caffeine this morning, so we're both like, let's go, let's go, let's go. But what our system might actually want is to just kind of practice this pause. When we get off this podcast, can we just sit for a couple minutes and kind of digest everything that we did here? If you're out for your walk, maybe when you walk through the door, you take your shoes off and you just pause even for 30 seconds. Practicing that pause and slowing things down can really help create more safety in your system because you're not running away from or towards things then. Like the proverbial tiger isn't chasing you if you can actually pause.
Perfect. That is just enough. Great advice. I love that. And I knew that was going to be your answer around everybody needs a different set of tools in their toolbox as we are all coming from a different place. So guys, pay attention to how you're feeling, how this podcast episode made you feel. If you got any value and you want to take some action, you know where to go. Everything's in the show notes below. Always here, loving on you, supporting you, bringing you that energy so that you're taking action to create the life that you want to be living. That gap isn't as big as you're imagining it to be. There is simple practices, people to help, work to be done. Let's fucking go. Thank you so much for your time and energy. I can't wait to connect with you even deeper outside of this podcast. But we'll see you guys on the next episode of the Jessica Burgio Show.